Welcome to There is a Method to the Madness. My name is Rob Maxwell. I'm an exercise physiologist and personal trainer. I'm the owner of Maxwell's Fitness Programs and have been in business for the past 28 years. That is since 1994. All right. So today's podcast is about return to play or return from injury. I talked a little bit, just a smidgen about this in the last podcast where I talked about returning to exercise after you've been ill or while you're ill. And I said I was going to talk about this. So this is basically part 2. So let's hit it. All right. So first off, whenever we become injured, we have to get rid of the pain and get rid of the inflammation. That could be easy or that could be difficult. All right. So we're talking about once the injury has been stabilized and you're no longer in pain, and that could be from any passive modalities you might have done or surgery. It doesn't matter. Once you are out of pain and once the inflammation is gone, which can come and go, so that one's a little bit vague. Sometimes when we start working out again and we start rehabbing, we get some inflammation. But basically, once the extreme inflammation is passed and we've got it calmed down, and once the pain is gone, then we're ready to get back to the gym, get back to exercise. And naturally I'm talking about exercising the area that was injured. In other words, when you hurt one area of your body, if you're an active exerciser or an athlete, there is no reason for you not to be working on a different area of your body. For example, if you have hurt your ACL, which is a knee injury, a fairly common knee injury in sports, there's absolutely no reason why you aren't doing your upper body. You really need to continue to exercise to stay fit and to maintain any physical capacity for your sport. So I think I'm preaching to the choir on that, and everybody out there listening pretty much understands that. So when I'm talking about return to play, I'm talking about returning to the area of your injury, the joints that you may have injured. It could be a shoulder, so I'm talking about coming back to upper body or shoulder, chest exercises. It could be knee or hip, and then I'm talking about coming back to lower body strength exercises and running and cycling or whatever else that you're doing. So that's what I'm talking about here. All right, so step 1 is you get out of pain. That's pain is your body's way of telling you there's a problem. Pain is actually a good thing, of course, at first because it tells you there's an issue. Now, let me explain pain here. So pain is sharp and subtle. Pain is sharp, not subtle, I should say. Soreness is something pretty normal. DOMS is delayed onset muscle soreness. That comes after a workout. That's very normal. You may get some DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, after working out an injured area too. So that's a little bit different. Chronic soreness means you don't have a lot of pain, but every time you get back to an activity on a particular vulnerable spot, you get some soreness. That's not great. That's telling you that you need to address the problem. But pain is pain. Pain really means it hurts and you can't put weight on it. You can't do the activity you want to do without a pretty sharp pain. All right. So first we have to understand all the different ways all the vagueness of pain. And we also have to understand that some people have higher pain thresholds than others. And we also have to address that. It's a difficult thing as a trainer. There are some people you ask if something hurts and they're grimacing and they say no. There are other people that you don't notice anything and you don't think something should hurt and they're telling you something hurts. So one thing I've learned as a trainer is you really can't question that because that's a good way to piss somebody off. And you just simply as a trainer have to go by what they're telling you, and you listening to this have to go by trying to understand what is pain and what is not pain. So again, a sharp pain, there is definitely a problem, and it means you can't continue the movement you were trying to do. So like let's say you're doing a push-up and you feel a pain in your shoulder and you literally can't push through that range of motion anymore. That's pain. That is absolutely red flag. Don't go past go, stop. All right. Then there's soreness. Soreness can come from pain, or soreness can kind of come out of nowhere. It could be the first sign of potential pain. So we also have to pay attention to that chronic soreness, that is, and that means that you're doing a push-up and it doesn't feel like pain, like you have to stop or you buckle, like your elbow or shoulder buckles, but it feels like, wow, okay, I noticed that, I can push through it, but it hurts. That's more pain, not sharp pain. It still needs to be identified. Then you get the little nagging pain that might come later. That's less of something you need to worry about, and it's definitely harder to identify because you absolutely don't know what caused that. You might have some suspicions, but you're not for certain. So that one is when we get into the category of, I'm not saying don't worry about it. I'm saying that, you are probably on the mend, and as long as you're doing your activities in good form and you're not overdoing it, that sort of pain is going to probably dissipate. Again, it's a very vague area. It's so hard for me to even try to explain to you what to do about it because it's such a personal, individualized thing. But sharp pain and nagging pain during an activity that is only to that activity is something you absolutely want to pay attention to. All right, so, man, that took a long time just to say we got to get out of pain. So we got to get out of pain. Okay, after that, we do have to strengthen our area. So the next step back from an injury is we do have to strengthen that area. And this is, not just if you're an athlete. This is, you don't want to keep a vulnerable joint vulnerable. And I know some of you might say, well, yeah, I did that. I went to physical therapy. And, if you've listened to any of my previous podcasts on these subjects, I'm not too keen on a lot of what happens in physical therapy. It started out as one of the best industries I think there is. And that's the problem. We now call it an industry. It started out as one of the best professions, I believe, and it was something that I really looked into in college. And then when I kind of saw what it was more about or what it was becoming, and this was in the 90s, I wasn't overly a fan. It's become very controlled and very check your boxes, and it's just not everybody gets what they need. I'm not saying physical therapists are bad. I think they're very well educated and good. I think unfortunately the industry really limits them to what they can do, how long they can see a patient, and they just don't have a lot of control over it. And so what ends up happening is basically shake and bake, and everybody ends up doing the same thing, whether you're let's say an amateur elite athlete locally, or somebody retired that twisted their ankle on a sidewalk. They're essentially going to be doing the same leg exercises, and that's just absolutely not appropriate. And the only time that's not the case is when these athletes are playing for professional sports teams or even high-level college teams, which they're absolutely professional these days. Trust me, I follow NCAA athletics, and these kids that are going to college and playing in Division I football or basketball, those are the two big money earners for universities, are absolutely getting like professional care with their injuries. And they should, but so should everybody else. So it's not happening in that sector, and it's good to do some of the modalities with your injury, meaning like the E-stim that they offer, the TENS unit that they offer, the heat and cold. I mean, if your insurance is going to pay for it, if not, why on earth are you paying $120 a half hour to have somebody ice your leg? But, you can do those modalities, but you are not going to be strong enough to return to play after that, I promise you. So after you get out of pain and do what you have to do with your insurance, you definitely have to then strengthen the area. So then the next thing you want to do is isolate the area and strengthen it. So if it's a shoulder, you really want to strengthen the muscles around the shoulder, which are all of the deltoids, the anterior deltoid, the medial deltoid, and the posterior deltoid. You also want to isolate and strengthen the pecs because it moves the humerus, which is connected into the shoulder. You also want to strengthen the latissimus dorsi and rhomboids because, again, they move the humerus, which connects into the shoulder. So you want to work all of those muscles around the injury. I'm already assuming you're working all the other muscles because, as I said, there's no reason to not be working out the other parts of your body. So now we are working the muscles around the joint. once we get a pretty good grasp on that, and oftentimes people ask me, well, what's the timeline? It's hard to say. I mean, everybody's so individual, but once you feel like you're doing all of those isolation exercises around the joint without pain, and I already defined what pain was, then you know you're getting better and you can move to the next stage, which is putting those things together, meaning that, okay, so I didn't really have any pain, isolated my shoulders. Again, I'm sticking to the shoulders here just for, well, number one, they're actually one of the hardest injuries to cure, so to say, because the shoulder essentially is held together by tiny muscles and larger muscles, and there's not a whole lot of other connective tissue, which makes them very muscularly dependent. And the shoulder is a ball and socket joint, which means it can move in so many different directions, unlike a knee and an elbow, which is a hinge joint, which can only flex or extend. The shoulder is a ball and socket, so it can rotate and do all these things, which means it's much more prone to injury, and it's much more prone to getting flared up once you're injured. So it makes it one of the harder areas to rehab. So anyway, that's why I'm using that. But once you get where all those areas are isolated and you feel like you're pain-free and good, it's time to put it all together and do some of the more compound movements for the upper body, which is, in the case of the shoulder, it would be like a pushing movement, like a chest press, a bench press, or a push-up. It would be a total pulling movement, like a pull-up or a pull-down or a row. Then you would really try to strengthen that whole area. In other words, you're now working it as a complete body instead of just the isolated parts, and that tends to be a little harder. It's more intense and it puts more pressure on things. For example, let's say it was a knee. That would mean you've gone from leg extension and leg curl to seated calf, and seated calf to squats and leg presses, which is going to make it harder. So that's what we do, and I've started doing that with somebody today. With a knee, I moved on to more advanced exercises. That's what you do. You move on to more advanced strength exercises. Once you feel like the area is strong, like how do you know it's strong? Well, you're moving up on weights and they're not getting any more pain. It's getting stronger. That is an excellent sign, and you've already progressed to the harder exercises, the compound exercises, the squats, the presses, the pulls, the lunges. Once you've done that and they're without pain, great, we are really moving on. The next step then is to start working on what is called functional movement. Functional movement means it's not sport specific yet. That's the next stage, little preview. Functional movement means it's something everybody should be able to do because it's functional. Now, some of those strength exercises we've already been doing in this stage are functional. A push-up is functional, all right? You've got to be able to push yourself off a floor. That's a functional movement. A pull-up is functional. Now, we don't live in a society where we have to climb trees anymore, but that's what we were designed to do. So that's a functional movement, all right? So we're already doing some functional movements, but if it's lower body, it's a little more, there's more intended to do, because now the functional movements mean running. That's a functional movement. It's, running straight ahead, running for a mile, running for a quarter mile, whatever. It depends on what the sport is. If it's a baseball player, they don't have to run as much, but they have to run. So you would see if they can run quarter miles at a time without any pain. That's functional. You can see if they can run backwards. That's functional. You can see if they can go side to side. Again, we're not getting into sport-specific stuff just yet, but we're getting more functional. All right. I live in Daytona Beach, Port Orange area. We have a lot of surfers. So let's say surfers. Surfer, that's a sport where if you've injured your shoulder, it's going to affect your surfing. You can't surf because you can't paddle. If you injured your knee, hip, or ankle, you can't surf because you can't stand up on the board. So surfing, you're eliminated from doing if you get injured. So it is something we have to bring people back to. So in the case of a surfer, let's say, and they've injured their lower body, functional would be being able to do a little running, being able to do a little jogging, and being able to do a little side-to-side stuff, because even though they're not moving side-to-side, they are standing up laterally on the board, which is a little bit side-to-side. So That's the next stage. And that stage may not last very long for certain people. Like that stage wouldn't last very long for surfers. Because once you've established over a week's time that they're able to do this stuff pretty well, then you can say, you know what, we're really close to getting back into the water. But what you want to do before you do that is test them in some controlled environments. All right, so tennis player, what do you have to do? Well, I do have to backpedal a lot. Okay, let's do some drills at the gym backpedaling. I do have to go side to side a lot to get a forehand or a backhand. Okay, let's see you move side to side. Oh, and by the way, this is no longer just functional. Hold your racket, and let's do that. Okay, if it's a shoulder injury, well, I do have to throw the ball up in the air. Okay, let's see this motion. Let's see it before we actually start playing. How is that? So you basically try to emulate the movements that they're going to do in their sport in the best way possible, just to kind of see. And the other good thing is you're giving them strengthening drills they can be doing as they get back into their sport, so hopefully they don't get injured again. So you can give them some of these sport-specific functional strength exercises or mobility exercises that will help them continue to stay stronger. So that is the return to play. And believe it or not, there is one more criteria that we use. Can you guess what it is? Well, if this was live radio, I could do that dramatic pause, but I can't, so I got to keep talking. It's psychological readiness, and it's a biggie. That's the one that we use with professional or elite athletes that have become injured. It's psychological readiness, and that is huge. People think, oh, come on, man. Yeah. It's like, no, it is huge. They've pretty much proven that if you are afraid of getting hurt again, you're pretty much going to get hurt. This is a little example I used to teach to my students, okay? Think about this. This is pretty crazy. So they looked at some analysis of basically downhill skiers and downhill mountain bike racers, which is really crazy, the speeds that these dudes get to. And what they're taught in these controlled environments is when you're at the top of the mountain, whatever, skiers or mountain bikers, it's the same thing. It's basically passive motion, so gravity is taking you down. And the mountain biking thing freaks me out. I know people that do it. I'm like, how in the hell do they do that? Like, I would not want to do it. But anyway, if those guys crash, it's not just, you might have torn your meniscus or, sprained your ankle. I mean, could be easily death. I mean, their speeds are crazy fast. And the same with skiers. The skiers, I guess, at least have the snow, which is softer. But in any event, I think everybody knows it's pretty dangerous if you crash. So I'm not saying don't be afraid of it. That'd be ridiculous. What I'm saying is what they did was they taught these downhill folks to say, okay, so you see that tree down there and you see this tree. Yes. All right, never look at either tree. Look in between the whole time. And they do some simulated computer stuff with them first. Reason being, what you look at, you're going to hit at that speed. So they have to remain so focused on maybe a 4 foot, which sounds far apart, but I promise you it's not when you're going 100 miles an hour. So or whatever they hit, they probably do hit that. I'll have to text one of my buddies after this that does it and ask him what speeds they hit, and I'll let you know in a future podcast. Got to be so cool if we were radio, because I can call him right now. But anyway, that's going to be my guess. 60 to 100 miles an hour at crazy speeds. Bikes anyway. So if they look at either tree, they're going to hit it. So so you have to go between the trees. Like, these dudes have obstacles that they got to get through. That's the whole race. And they can't look at the tree. They have to look between the trees. So forever, however long it takes to get down there, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, I don't know, whatever, 10 seconds, whatever blip of speed it is that when they hit their descent and then they hit full speed and then they have to go through this terrain or whatever, they have to look straight ahead where they're going. They cannot look anywhere else. And it's the old saying, like with motorcycles, which I happen to ride, and I took a defensive motorcycle class. I've taken it twice. It's a great course. I love it, actually. It teaches you so much about these kind of things and other kinds of things on the road, and some things about life. But anyway, The old saying is look down, go down. Like, you cannot look down. You have to look through a turn. You don't look at the turn. And I try to teach some of my clients I work with on cycling, because we'll get out on trails, on road trails, but you'll be going at a pretty good clip of speed and have to hit a pretty sharp corner. I'm like, look through the turn. Look through the turn. Put your knee up and look through the turn. Do not look down. Like, do not look. Not because it's like catastrophic. It's not like we're going 100 miles an hour, but you do have a greater propensity to fall if you look down, and at the faster speeds it becomes even more dramatic. So you have to look where they're going. And you're like, what the hell does this have to do with injuries? It's the same thing. If you think you're going to get hurt, if you're afraid of getting hurt, you have to take more time off before you return to play. Because most likely you will get hurt, and the studies have shown that. So a lot of these times with some of these athletes that get hurt that never make it back, these pro athletes, I'm sure you just had people run through your brain that you go, oh, that guy. I mean, I don't know, and I'm damn sure not going to say it here, because I do know some. I do know some athletes on both sides that got hurt, never came back, got hurt, came back. And I do know some, it was because they couldn't get over the psychological barrier, and some just couldn't get back. So, I'm not going to say who's who and what's what, because none of us know, but we do know that you have a much greater chance of hurting yourself if you're afraid of getting hurt again. And you have a much greater chance of never making it back if you're afraid too. So there has to be the happy medium. Again, fear is a good thing, but the athlete who got hurt has to have a good sounding board, a good trainer. I think I'm really good in that area, because I can talk to the person and give them reassurance that, hey, look, you are strong now. You're ready for this. We have done what we needed to do in rehabilitation. We have made your knees stronger. We have made your shoulders stronger. We have done what we can, and you have passed every physical test that tells me you're ready to play. Freak things can always happen, but you are ready to play. Focus on your technique. Focus on your mechanics. Focus on your form. Focus on what you love about the sport. And if you do that, chances of getting hurt are pretty rare. So I will talk somebody up like that, because I 100% believe that, and I'm not bullshitting them. So they're going to need somebody in their corner to help them with that. There are people now, and I would love to be one. If I ever went back for more education, it would be be a sports psychologist, because there are people out there that is what they do. And a big part of what they do is they take an athlete who has been injured. This is especially in sports psychology, and they go to them and they talk to them and they help them get back out on the field. And for those that aren't athletes, you might be thinking, God, this is all pretty, it sounds like too big of a deal for all us. That's a naive way of thinking, because some of these dudes, and professionally, they're making millions of dollars, and their entire livelihood is on it. And not only that, but unfortunately, it's the way it is now. Some of these people have been training since they're 5 years old. Like, this is what they were meant to do. You look at Tiger Woods, a golf club is in his hand at 2 or whatever, And so, not only are they thinking financially, but they're also thinking, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And that's sad, but a lot of them think that way. So I totally get the shitload of fear that these guys might have about going back out there, and they might want to take longer time in rehab because they're delaying the inevitable. I totally get it. And that's why we really need the professionals to help them overcome this, because we don't want them having fear going into it, because most likely they will hurt themselves again, either in the same injury or a similar one or something else, because the focus just isn't on the space between the trees where we want it. The focus is on the tree. All right, so I'm going to leave you with that. Focus on the space between the trees. Those are the steps. By the way, there's 6 steps. Did you count them all? All right, so that's our series on return to illness and return to play. At this time, I would like to thank Jonathan and Lynn Gilden at the Gilden Group at Realty Pros. They're the absolute best at real estate, and I can vouch for them. They absolutely get out there and push. I know Jonathan better than Lynn, only because I work with him sometimes, and I know he'll get like a gazillion texts all the time. He'll get them during working out sometimes, and you know what? As soon as he's finished, he starts answering them. Why? Because he cares. He wants to be the very best at what he does. To me, that really, really matters. I've had some really crappy real estate agents, really bad. Man, I wish I could name names. I wouldn't do that, but my friends know who they are. But Jonathan and Lynn are not two of them. They are absolutely awesome, and I really do vouch for them. So please give them a shout at thegildengroup.com. Again, thegildengroup.com. Until next time, be Max Fit and be Max Well.